Hello everyone, we are back. It's Tech Talk time, but this time we're recording it on Sunday, basically because of the fact that I wanted to play Manowar 2 the last few days and also get the air event done pretty quickly, just so I could play some other stuff. You know, with War Thunder and things, it's been pretty chill the last few weeks, so there hasn't been a ton to go through or really chat about or do. Hopefully this week we actually get a bit of, something happening because of the fact it's been, as I said, kind of boring. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the Battle of Crete done and then moving on to some other stuff. So yeah, that's the idea. If you don't know what the Tech Talk is, basically we do live stream it, but also record it for YouTube. It's a weekly podcast where we go through all of the comments from the previous episodes. And the idea is to basically answer questions, discussion points, thoughts, all that general stuff, which I think is overall pretty good. I've been enjoying it a lot. We're actually coming up to, I think, a year doing these things, or at least half a year, something like that. And it's kind of nuts to think about how quickly these types of things go. It's something, I'm happy that's been going pretty good. So let's just get started and let's see what's going on in the world. So the first comment is from Penclaw, and it is the Wellington in a Bond shop is such a meme. I know, man. Like there's a bunch of vehicles that turn up in the Warbond shop which are just memes. They're stuff like I can't remember what it's called, but it's like the T-51B or something, or the Type 51 or Type something or other. Basically, that Japanese plane which has the fans on the back of it, propelling it, like that thing right there used to pop up in the Warbond shop all the time, and every time I was just like, why would you ever want to use that vehicle? Why would you ever get it for Warbonds? And I'm guessing people didn't because it hasn't been seen for a long time. Hey Windowman, nice to see you. So yeah, it was just super weird. It was a very odd situation, and I'm happy that at least nowadays we seem to be getting a little bit better Warbond vehicles, but it's still not up there, right? I feel like the amount of effort that people put into the Warbond stuff to get these things, it would be nice if they increased it to rank 4s, right? Or maybe just one rank 4, because at the end of the day, since the Warbond shop was added, the game has gone from rank 5 to rank 8. Or maybe, no, I don't think it was ever rank 4 in the Warbond shop, because the Warbond shop came out after Ground and stuff like that, so yeah. But it's just kind of ridiculous it's just kind of ridiculous that the game has morphed that much, but the vehicles you get in the shop are the same. It's kind of nuts. Yeah, it's free premium vehicles, that's true, and same with the battle pass stuff and event stuff. At the end of the day, it is technically free stuff, but the amount of effort that you put in has increased, and what you get out of it has stayed the same. So I feel like, in general, it's something that should at least be looked at. Even if it means having options where it's increased ones, increased cost of them, to be able to get higher ones, right? That would be quite nice. If special tasks carried on over seasons, then it would be pretty nuts. I'd be sat on probably 1,000. I'd be probably sat on 1,000 special tasks at this point. I wouldn't even have to do the battle pass. Oh god, I just kind of sit there, But then we have Away With You, Val Beggar. Hey Tech, I found the name of the game I was talking about. It was Natural Selection 2, and I believe one of the devs went on to create Subnautica. Either that or the connection between the two games was an Easter egg. Yeah, Natural Selection 2 was the game that got screwed over by G2A. That was, well, I shouldn't say it was screwed. Well, it was screwed over by G2A, but basically because of how G2A is set up. So basically what happened is the developers lost so much money from stolen credit cards and stolen stuff like that, that basically what it meant was they had so many chargebacks and shit like that that they could not function, so they had to close their doors. And it was the first time during like gaming where people like, oh, this like reseller stuff is a problem. Because like everybody just thinks about, oh well, it's just people trying to get like cheaper games from different regions, right? And you know, but maybe everybody should have cheaper games and all of this stuff, but it's not that. Like, some of it might be that, and maybe on the consumer side of things, that's what it is. But on, like, the developer side of things, it is literally the fact that it isn't, like, just consumers trying to get cheaper games. Like, you know, I'm sure a lot of devs will be fine with that. It's the fact that the people who are supplying these keys to the people who want cheaper games are double dipping. So they're not just buying them in these regions and then selling them for a slightly higher markup, therefore everybody wins. They are buying them through the use of stolen credit cards or stolen information, so therefore they don't actually have to pay a penny for it either. And if people are willing to break the rules to do one thing, they're usually willing to break the rules to do another. So it was it basically meant that the developer wasn't getting any money out of any of the sales. And of course, this is, you know, basically led... Oh my god. Basically led to a bunch of problems where developers were losing a metric ton of money. And, you know, I suppose like the large publishing houses and the large developer setups could probably eat that, but small developers weren't able to. And a bunch of them died. So, sucks. There was actually a settlement between G2A, and I can't remember who it was, but it was a while ago, about that. Basically, when it was found that G2A were actually part of the process and were profiting off of it. By the way, the RTS mode idea you spoke of is something that really slipped my mind. Now, I don't know if the teams would sacrifice a spot for the commander, or they get another player that only played that role, maybe the coach if they allow it in tournaments. When it comes to ART suggestions, I agree with you, but I want you to remember that whenever you see a suggestion like this coming from me, I'm merely trying to think of a more realistic way to add silly meme suggestions. I don't actually care to have more mechanics in the game, since I believe we both agree that Gaijin should polish what's already here, instead of adding new stuff just because we need new stuff all the time. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I would put it like that for me, because I think it's good to add new stuff, and I think it's good to keep the game fresh, at least in certain areas. The issue I have is the fact of the constant wheel of, you know, what happens in a lot of these types of games where you have, okay, so they come out with a new mechanic's busted, or new vehicle is busted. Okay, so now we just have to wait like 2 or 3 months for the next thing to not be busted. And it's not necessarily the fact that the mechanics are broken, like they don't work properly or whatever it is. It's more down to the fact that they add them not having a counter, and then in 3 months you get the counter, and then that's better than everything, and then it goes on and on and on, right? So a lot of the mechanics that they add to the game work pretty good. Like the digging mechanic was fine, I can't remember any bugs with that. Stuff like smoke obviously has had its up and downs. New shell stuff, you know, and then even like the way that transmissions work, the digging in the ground, like on this stuff, like the visual stuff, but also, you know, the effect it has on the game. There's a lot of things which I think are generally okay to keep expanding upon. The problem I have is, yeah, like the drone stuff or other mechanics which come in, like when the FJ4B was the only vehicle with guided missiles, right? Like in the form of bullpups. So it took for 3 or 4. Well, no, maybe not. Maybe like it was at least an update where like they added, you know, more AGMs to other places. So you had an event there where if you completed the event, you actually got an advantage over other people who were playing. And that is just, that's not okay. Like that was not okay. And I know, like, when it comes to a lot of things, like Enlisted does this a lot too. Where Enlisted, like, oh, we're doing an event for this new mechanic. Grind out the event so you can test out the new mechanic. And it's like, what about the people who don't want to play or don't have time to play the event? Do they just what if the mechanic is busted? And unfortunately, in Enlisted's life cycle so far, there has been way more ridiculously busted mechanics. Like paratroopers is just nuts, which is crazy. I also like the challenge of trying to make these sort of suggestions work in a realistic way, because it brings to light what the actual problems with the said suggestion. When we try to implement something new is when the problems show up. Yeah, I agree. I think that's the best way of doing these things. Like that's why so the most important thing for me as a person is not the design stage of something, but the testing stage. Because in terms of designing, you can design whatever you want, right? Like you can design a perfect system which is going to work all the time, but you need to give it to people to test to see what they can break, and you've got to make sure to give it to the right people, right? And that's not always the easiest thing to do, but it's something that you have to rely on. Now, in War Thunder, that testing dynamic there has not always been very good, which is why there's been problems with these things. But also, the main thing that's interesting is when people like come with suggestions or whatever, and my first question is always, okay, well, I see your point. Now, when we have a look at it, right? So we have a look at this suggestion. How do you break it? Like, or do you see like the other side of things, right? What's the counter to like what you want? It's like a lot of the time, like, well, pretty much every day, there's always somebody who's like, hey, do you want to see this in the game? And one of my first questions is, well, okay, what type of thing do you want there, or how would you implement it? Or like yesterday, someone was asking, oh, do you want cluster bombs in War Thunder? My first question is, well, which cluster bombs? And then the follow-up is, oh, I don't know. And then the person has to look at Wikipedia, and they have to like look, they have to look at all the things, and it gives them, first of all, a little bit of knowledge, but it also means they get to actually look into what they're thinking about, right? Like asking questions about these things. And sometimes it can backfire. Like people get ultra defensive about things because they're basically just throwing out a talking point because they've heard it somewhere. But it's an interesting thing to do, and I think positive thing to do, even if it causes aggression. You have to doubt ideas, you know, you have to try different things, and also, you know, work out what works and not. You can't just like barrel through and just keep chucking things at things, you know. Nonetheless, prepare for another meme suggestion next week. It's going to be highly realistic and historically accurate. Well, that's what we like, you know. Out of the out of the great world of War Thunder, that's what we want. Have a good one too, man. Hopefully you have a good day. There's another guy here. I can't really see him. But yeah, it's always nice reading through the comments. Oh my god, have a way with you, Valbeggar. Always have a good time with it. Then we have Maxall with the timestamps. It's very kind of you, Maxall. Thank you, as always, for doing them. Because it is a painstaking effort. My missus actually, just as like a tangent, my missus is actually doing like a presentation thing next week in her like field of work. So I'm gonna go to that, but like one of the things she's having to do right now is she has like a speech and everything like that, and one of the parts of her work is she has to transcribe somebody else's like conversation that they had, and it's like a 50-minute conversation, so she has to like write it out verbatim and do all of these things. Is just ridiculous, you know. Hey senpai, nice to see you. Hopefully you're doing good, man. And yeah, she's realizing how annoying it is to edit and type out like what people are saying. And it just reminded me, like, because we don't really talk about like the stuff that I do like here, right? Because, you know, it's my stuff, and it's like it's nice to have, and it, you know, it's very relaxing, but it's not something she's like super interested in. She did actually ask me about it last night, which was kind of weird and out of the blue. But it was just funny how like two worlds collide, right? Like, because for me, when I'm doing like editing and stuff like that, that's something that I have to do. I have to like listen to myself, work out what I said where, and you know, now since someone was talking the other day about the timestamp stuff, I'm gonna really try and put an effort into doing that the next few months. Like, even with, you know, ongoing audio, trying to put in like a few timestamps here and there. Not with the tech talks, because as I said, it just takes too long. But the other stuff, I definitely will, right? But yeah, transcription is just a pain, and that will be a job that I'm very happy that AI will eventually take once it's good enough, and once everybody has the same accent, which might take a long time, but who knows? Hey, Snake Mantis, nice to see you. You think you've spent over 1,000 quid on War Thunder? Goddamn. Well, as long as you've enjoyed it, you know? That's the main thing. If you haven't enjoyed it, then it's better to find something else that you can spend 1,000 quid on. But yeah, thank you to Maxwell. Like, that's the main thing to get out of this. You know, the fact is, it's been very, very kind of him over the weeks, and also, you know, Kwam Chan and TK and other people have done it. It's just, it's really, I can't thank you guys enough. It's as simple as. Then we have Bewilds. Service Tech. Greetings from Austria. Every time I hear something like that, I think of friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your feet. Which was in Carry On Pompeii, which was a Carry On film. If you never seen the Carry On films, by the way, highly recommend it. Carry On films are great. Basically, Carry On Up the Khyber, Carry On Matron. They're basically like 60s, 70s, 80s. They're just like silly, raunchy English comedies. I'd highly recommend Carry On Up the Khyber. It's definitely not what you would class as politically correct nowadays, but like, you'll still have a good time. You could probably find it online somewhere. I remember trying to find it a few years ago because I wanted my missus to watch some of them, but yeah, I couldn't. I was recently thinking about a mechanic which could simulate a human loader a bit more dynamically. I call it loader fatigue, and how it would work is that every time you load around, it would increase. The more it increases, the more reload time increases too. It could look like this. Numbers aren't too well thought out. When you have below 10% fatigue, every loaded shot will add 2% of fatigue. When you have 10 to 30%, it'll increase by 3% per shot, so on and so forth. Now, to effect in its reducing, every percent of fatigue would add 0.5% reload time. 0.5%? When you haven't loaded around for 10 seconds, it will start to decrease 1% per 8 seconds of not loading. When you haven't loaded for a minute, it will decrease by 1% every 3 seconds. If your fatigue is below 10%, it will decrease already after 5 seconds, and will decrease faster after half a minute. When you have more than 90% fatigue, it will only decrease after 20 seconds, and decrease faster after 2 minutes. As it would be a nerf to all manually loaded tanks, I think the base reload of said tanks has to be reduced by about 20% to counter it. I have no idea if it would actually work without making those tanks too strong or weak. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Sorry for the long one. That's all good. It's you know, it's worth going through. Thank you for the subscription, Loracor. Thank you for continuing to support the channel. It's very much appreciated. Thank you very much. My first question is why? Why would you want to implement a mechanic like this? Because you've laid out many calculations there, which nobody is going to be able to do in the time of what's going on. And basically, people are going to get frustrated when their reload is not what they think it should be. Like, sometimes it's fine keeping certain things standard because it's something that you can rely on as you go through. Like, for example, with most 105s, you know, it's an 8.7 reload. You know, with or stock 8.7. With the Abrams, you know, it's top 5 seconds. These things, so people rely on them for timings and stuff. If you add in this super complicated system, which, you know, changes things by points of a percentage or even like full percentages, it's going to be impossible to track. Like, people already struggle with stuff like crew skills, right? Now in Air, we kind of have a system like that. It's called stamina. If you've had a look at that and how it affects certain things. So this type of mechanic could easily be added to the game if you really wanted to. But as I said, what would be the point? Because you're basically punishing people for being in battle longer and surviving longer. And so it's going to be harder for people to actually play if they're doing well. Which, you know, I mean, technically you could have stuff like that. You know, how like certain games, when somebody is like doing really good, they have an MMR system to bump them up, so therefore they fight people more of their skill level. You know, stuff like SPMM, for example, which, you know, I'm not a huge fan of. But the simple thing about it is, in War Thunder, the only reason I could see adding a system like that is to is to basically make it more realistic. But like, you know, I've never liked stuff like those arguments because of the fact that, you know, War Thunder doesn't simulate a real world tank experience. But yeah, if they added it, and it basically made like the starter reload for most manual vehicles different, you know, because obviously they would change fatigue-wise over time. There would need to be like a huge rebalance of a ton of vehicles, so that would be a bit of a problem. But, you know, I mean, it's just one of those which can be done, but the question really is why? What is the motivation behind it? Like, why? Because it's very hard to paint a picture where it actually makes gameplay funner for people. If anything, it just makes it a bit more RNG and a bit more reliant on crew skills. And as a person who really doesn't like the fact that crew skills have such a big impact on these vehicles already, I wouldn't want them to have even more going into the future. So that would be my general thought, right? But as I said, the question would be why? Why would you want a mechanic like this? And maybe there's a reason for it. Maybe it makes sense. You know, maybe there's something that I'm missing. You know, that does happen quite a lot. So maybe there's that, but I don't know. I don't think I would have a good time with it. Hey, MMEM, nice to see you. Yeah, we're doing some tech talk stuff, just getting her done. And playing a bit of the good old playing a bit of the good old Crusader to get the Crete thing done. Then we have Gianmarco Marso. Nice to see you once again. Hi Tech, hope life's been kind to you. So far so good. You know, we've had it's hockey season and Vancouver is in the playoffs. So that basically means that everybody is sleeping while hockey's going on. So overall, it's been quite nice. It's been pretty chill. Watching the games and just chilling with the fam. And the only thing is I'm kind of thrown off a little bit because I thought, you know, the new stuff would have at least started this week when it comes to War Thunder, but I'm guessing it's going to be next week. So we'll have to see what goes on because it's just nuts. As the one who originally suggested the War Thunder Nostalgia series, I'm incredibly grateful that you've made it into a reality. The quality is out of this world. As a non-veteran player, it adds a ton of perspective for me. Thank you. That's all good. I've been enjoying it. You know, the videos we did this weekend on the developer Q&A were really fun to do because it just showed the contrast, right? So that video came out basically 10 years ago, right? 10 years ago. And there were many years where there was a ton of people saying, oh, why don't the devs talk to the community, yada, yada, yada. And there's videos like that from 10 years ago showing that they did. The issue, for me, is the fact that when we have a look at stuff like that, the crazy thing about it is that many of the questions that were brought up in that video were also brought up in the past year. Many of them over the past week, showing that mentality or thought really has not changed for a lot of people, even over a 10-year period of time. And that has to be just like crazy, right? Like there was so many, there was only one question in there which I feel like has at least been solved from a community perspective, which was the like who gets the kill after doing the critical damage stuff, because that was always a thing in air, right? Like that was always a problem. But it's just really cool to see. And yeah, we're gonna do a ton of things with that. You know, the Gamescom stuff's really cool. I wish like Gaijin still did the Gamescom stuff, but you know, there isn't really a point of them doing it at the end of the day, because they're, you know, they're basically they're an established brand now, right? So the whole point of Gamescom is to spend a bunch of money to get yourself out there. Well, if you already have yourself out there, there's not really much point in it. But yeah, we're gonna do more videos in the future about that. I think doing one every weekend's quite nice. You know, it's just kind of relaxing and something to look forward to, at least for me. And hopefully, the other thing that we can sort out is, you know, maybe doing a few like forum posts and stuff like that of what has happened in the past too. Because with the forum dying, I think when are they getting rid of the old forum? I think it's like next year, right? I need to save it, actually. Save the website. But with that dying, there's a lot of nostalgia and a lot of stuff which disappears with it. Like, so many ideas, like the original War Thunder Player Union, or the War Thunder, whatever you want to call it. Like, the War Thunder, like, players... Yeah, well, yeah, I suppose the War Thunder Player Union. There's, you know, certain YouTubers getting banned from not just the game, but also from real life, like getting jailed, which was always quite fun. And, you know, there was a ton of different pieces of lore which were always fun to go through over the years. You know, the YouTuber Cup stuff also is another thing that, you know, could be talked about too. Because that is a piece of history that has just disappeared. Because the original, I think the original stream for that has just gone, hasn't it? Like the one with good old Bruce and Fly, where Bruce said some interesting things. You know, as you do. That was a bit of a crazy show, but yeah, kind of fun. Hey, Saddest dude, nice to see you. I see you too, Astro. I'm doing well. Life's good. You know, we're just chilling doing the tech talk. I have a question about the removed German vehicles, like the Tiger 205. Something that always strikes me about these vehicles is that they don't function like the standard event vehicles. Gadget removed to create artificial scarcity. They don't show up in SL or GE crates. They don't become purchasable on rare anniversary dates. There is no market coupon for them. This is weird to me, because there's clearly a lot of demand for these vehicles. There has to be a reason to turn down that opportunity to make some money. What do you think? Well, the reason why they're treated differently compared to other event vehicles is because they're not event vehicles. They were tech tree vehicles. Like, the vehicles themselves were like the end-of-the-line German vehicles, and the reason why they decided to choose them was because in their first vision of what, you know, ground was going to be, you know, basically 1935 to 1945 or 47, what ended up happening was what ended up happening is they added these vehicles in order to kind of be the end of the line vehicles, because obviously Germany lost the war. So because they lost the war, production ended. But they wanted to add, like, the Gaijin wanted to add stuff like the T-44, the IS-4M, the T-54, vehicles like this, right? So it was seen that because there was a gap in German technology between, you know, Cold War era Leopards and, you know, Tiger IIs, they were going to fill the gap with fake vehicles. And it worked, you know? But as the game progressed, and as their ideas of what ground was going to become, which was instead of that Cold War era, you know, till like 1950s, 60s, it's now going to expand to the modern day. For them, there has been something they've strived for a long time, which is historical accuracy when it comes to their vehicles. So basically, they decided, okay, well, we have things that we can add in, which aren't, you know, these vehicles, and they can replace them, and they can be removed from the game. They did it basically at the same time as the mouse, but the reason why they removed the mouse from the game is because they couldn't balance it. There was no way to effectively actually make it fit the game, so that's why they removed that one. But the two vehicles, the Panther 2 and the Tiger 2 105, the reason why they removed them is because they were fake vehicles. And instead of ever bringing them back, they have stuck to that mantra, right? Yeah, same with the Coelian. The Coelian itself was a vehicle which was a wooden mock-up, right? It was never fully built, so they removed that too. And the interesting thing is they've kind of, you know, sat there on these and sat there for a long time on them, even though nowadays, you know, ideas have changed from them. Like, you have a bunch of naval vehicles that were never built, or never fully built, I should say. You have the J6K1, you have the R2Y2, and you also have modern vehicles which have realistic stats, but stats which you can never show to be historical. And also at the same time, we have vehicles added to the game which were never fully finished. You know, stuff like the Radkampfwagen is one that people point to, and I've never actually looked into it myself, but the Radkampfwagen one is something to do with like the turret drive, where it should have like a stationary turret because it was never finished. But yeah, so it obviously does in game. So the simple thing is about it is there's this weird double standard going on right now, because in the past they removed these vehicles because they were ahistorical and didn't make any sense, but they left other vehicles in the game like the J6K1 because it was an event vehicle and also it was already finished by the time they'd made that decision, and the R2Y2 because they don't have a vehicle to replace the R2Y2 with, right? So that was the reason. But if you actually have a look at the vehicles that replace the Tiger 2 105, the Panther 2, and the Coelian, none of them are actually great ones that replace them, right? They added in the M48 to the German tech tree, and they also added in the Oswin 2. The Oswin 2 is not the same BR as the Coelian. The M48 is nowhere near the BR nowadays of the other two. In terms of, you know, general stuff. Like in arcade, Tiger 2 105, Panther 2, they're 7.0, whereas the M48 is 7.7, which means you have this huge gap here, which is just crazy. So yeah, they removed them under that idea. They weren't event vehicles, they weren't anything else. It was because of historical accuracy. And we now sit here today with a bunch of vehicles which aren't historical, which are sat there. So yeah. Oh yeah, the Chinese PT-76 as well. Yeah, that was another one, but they did technically replace that. Sometimes I wonder if they're slated to return at some particular time, but sometimes I get the suspicion that they keep them removed because it gives them a unique selling proposition, like saying, we're not like World of Tanks. I mean, technically, yeah, but at the same time, they have a bunch of other vehicles that didn't exist, which are already in the game. Whole reproduction, R2Y2s, J6, Z46, Z47, Kronstadt. Like there's one of the Italian ships as well, never got fully finished. So like that, if they want to do that as a selling point, it's not really. I think the way that I see it is this, and it's the way that I've seen it for a while. Oh yeah, good point, Penguin Red. Yep, I should probably fix that. Gadunk. There you go. So, oh no, I can show the Twitch chat. I just can't show the YouTube chat. That's the thing. Yeah, Japanese F-16. Yeah. So, in terms of balance and things like that, they're fine with adding stuff for balance reasons. They're just not fine with adding stuff for other reasons, such as they're cool. And basically, you just have to make the argument for balance, and then it's completely fine. So yeah, I honestly think what will end up happening is in the future, they will add, they'll have like an update, which will be called like King's Return, or or Proto Madness, or some terrible name, right? And what it'll have is it'll have access to all of the vehicles that they've removed in terms of fakeness, so basically those three, and then they'll bring in some more realistic vehicles like that, right? Like because even in the leak lists, or even in the leaked models from 2 or 3 or 5 years ago, there was vehicles in that which did not exist in real life. So they're obviously planning on something, otherwise they wouldn't exist. So it's either trying to get people comfortable enough to add these things, or trying to, you know, have the demand high enough so people don't care as much about the historical accuracy. But at the same time, there is a very, very annoying part of the player base which is super focused on historical accuracy. But luckily nowadays, a lot of those guys are focused on why top tier armor is not accurate. So if they like stay there and keep like fighting on that front, which they can do because it's a very stupid thing to get stuck on. But if those guys get stuck on that, then they might not care about the other parts, which I think would be generally good. So yeah. What reinforces my suspicion is that the staff responses about these removed vehicles on the forums always seem extra performative to me. Like they're meant to catch attention and approval from foreign users. I feel like that's looking a bit too much into it. Like, I'd understand the business logic behind the decision, but it'd also be unfortunate, since I'd love to be able to play these machines. But anyway, have a great one, and thanks again for having a bit of fun with us. So one of the things that I found for many years is when you're asked the same questions over and over again, you can either copy and paste an answer, which then will lead to... Have you ever played Fallout? Or have you ever played like Skyrim? Or have you ever played like a single player RPG? You know where you have like dialogue options? Where the first thing is like, ask this question, and then this question has this response, and then you have like 3 responses based off that, and then you have like all of this. That's what it feels like answering those questions. It literally feels like you are dealing with an NPC and like going through the motions. Because like, so for a lot of the guys who are like, you know, community managers and stuff, they get asked the same questions like every day. And so do I, about certain things. So that type of question, which is like, why don't you bring these vehicles back? They've probably been asked tens of thousands of times by different people. But everybody has like kind of similar opinions on it, right? So you can't really have any fun with it. So what I end up doing is I just end up lying. So I just start coming up with ludicrous stuff to say because I get so bored with dealing with the same thing. When's the next update, Tech? Oh, well, it's been delayed to 2025, actually. It's a sad thing, but unfortunately, the main coder has decided to get, like, Dick Bupkis, and, you know, that's unfortunately meant that he's had to take some time off, and then they've had to give it to the second string, and the second string, it turns out they were partying with, Khrushchev, and that ended up just not really working very well, so now they have, Ligma, and yeah, it's just unfortunate. So yeah, you just make up stuff like all the time because it just keeps your brain entertained. Otherwise, your brain just goes numb. And the thing is, like the community managers, obviously they're properly representing the company, right? So like they have to keep the party line with all these things. Luckily for me, I can just I can have a bit of fun with it, right? But for them, they have to do the whole. Yes, we understand that you'd like to see these things. They were removed for this reason. You can look at it here, and then you just have a person go, "Why did you do this? I hate you!" And then you have to like deal with all of these general things, and then you just sit there, and they just have to take it. And whenever they retire or whenever they move to another job, they should definitely do podcasts. And they should definitely just talk about the ludicrous stuff they've had to deal with over the years, because it would be hilarious. Because as a person who's also had to deal with similar stuff like that, it is hilarious, like, to a ridiculous point, and it does make you go a little bit zany. So yeah, it would be fantastic to see stuff like that. But that's why basically they have a bit of fun with it, because they've heard the same thing so many times, and it makes you go nuts. It honestly makes you go crazy, which is why you could never, in a million years, make me do like a job like that, unless you paid me a lot of money. Unless you paid me like, you know, I don't know, 150 grand a year, like with a bit of PTO every once in a while, and I was able to do other stuff, right? Like that is the level we're talking about, because it is so ridiculous dealing like with this stuff. The human race is an interesting bird, and yeah, it's just crazy. Alright, let's see. Hey, Mr. Jedi, nice to see you. Hopefully you're doing good. Hopefully life's okay. Why is there so many people on this cap? Alright, there we go. So yeah, it'll just be them having fun because they've had to deal with it so many different times, right? It's just like that's literally it. I can't, and as I said, I'm allowed to have a bit of creative license with it because I can just have a bit of fun. And you know, like for me, I think it's pretty obvious when I'm being, you know, serious and when I'm not being serious. But the fun of it is sometimes you can't tell, right? For them, they can't. Like unless it's like April Fools and they can, you know, screw with people. But you know, that's one day a year. So yeah, it's just one of those that it's just tough to deal with. Like if you're a community manager, it's like, and have a look at like Helldivers, right? Like the interesting thing about Helldivers is obviously Helldivers has a bunch of community managers, and whenever anything goes wrong with Helldivers, community managers are straight there to deflect and try and quell community outrage. So what that means is they become what do you call it? They become targets of communities, right? Because you can't talk to the devs because they've retreated into whatever hole that they're in, right? And then because a lot of the Helldivers devs used to be very active on social media, and then some of them decided to have a bit of fun with the whole like democracy and pride thing and be like and get good thing basically, because you know it's a part of the game, right? Fight for your rights, democracy, meh. So they did a bit, and then people took it super seriously, and now they're like, oh, okay, well, looks like I can't have any fun. Bye. So now, like, what happened with the Helldivers 2 guys over the last few months happened to the Gaijin guys 9 or 10 years ago. You know, they used to talk a decent chunk on social media. That some of them still do, by the way, to this day, like the devs and things like that. They just, you know, they talk on like VK or places like that. And a lot of them are just like, why am I dealing with these crazy people? Because you have to deal with all the nutters who just don't leave you alone. And then if you say one wrong thing, right? If you say one wrong thing, it's on social media. Everybody pushes it. Everybody talks about, hey, look at these disrespectful assholes who are like, you know, making this. You know, we should go after them. You know, the whole witch hunt stuff. And it's just nuts. So yeah, I'm not surprised that people get annoyed and don't deal with this stuff. And just like leave it and have like community managers to do it. But then the problem with that is community managers then become the target for this. So as I said, you'd have to pay me a lot of money to deal with that. Because a community manager for me is just a person who is a PR guy who is put there to try and make sure that people are having a good time, but also to be a shield for the people who are making decisions and pushing forward. And that sucks, man. That is not fun at all. Like, to be that. So yeah, kind of sucks. There we go. Hey, Bouble Poisson, nice to see you. Hopefully you're doing good. Like, it's a job that I'm not envious of, but I do respect a lot from specific people. Now, some people take it way too far and make it an absolute mess and are terrible at community managing, but others are not too bad. Right. Then we have Salsa Yemen. Hi Tech, hi timestamp guy. Today, the 18th of May, I spotted the first waves of a 17-year cicada invasion where I live. In War Thunder, the Vladimir T-90A reminds me of them. These two electro-optical jammers look like red, beady eyes of a cicada. Do you have any experience or opinion on cicadas? Also, are there any vehicles in War Thunder that remind you of insects? Another one for me is the wildcat. It reminds me of the katydid or the bush cricket. I have heard of cicadas because I remember watching a documentary on them, because they're one of those things that only appear every so often, right? And they just appear and there's just a swarm of them and then they just disappear again. Like it's a very, very weird, it's a very, very weird setup, which is very odd to me. There we go. The fact that you have like these insects or animals that just appear in great numbers and then just disappear when something goes after them. It very much reminds me of the Chinese stuff. You know, they tried to kill a fly with frogs, and then the frogs take over everything, so then they try and get something to kill the frogs, and then that takes over everything. It's pretty fun. I like it. The food cycle of stuff is very interesting. In terms of, like, vehicles looking like insects, can't really think of many that I would class as looking like insects. But that's one of those that I'd have to, like, think about for a while. So, yeah. Would have to have a look at. Yeah, the SMS Sachsen. You've just gotten it? Oh, fair enough. I can't remember what that is. Pretty sure it's like a German battleship though, right? Should be fine. But the... Ooh. The insect stuff in general is one of those which I feel like it would be kind of interesting to try something like that in War Thunder. Like where you have a look at like certain patterns of how insects move around or how they communicate, and try and create like a game mode around it. Like there's a game that I just got a code for, which is Empires of the Undergrowth, and that's all about like growing an ant colony and then, you know, doing different things to try and understand how it all works. And it would be interesting to see something like War Thunder do that. I don't know how you'd do it though from a PvP point of view. I have to have a think. Alright. Am I European or Canadian? Well, technically both. But yeah, the big thing up here when it comes to insects and stuff is there was this wonderful area of swampland which used to get very heavy mozzie wise. And the cool thing about it is they used to go in with flamethrowers to try and burn them all down and burn out all of the kind of like hatching areas of mosquitoes, which is quite ironic since this area also is known for wildfires. But you know, we go in circles. Then we have Nuki Avenger. Hi Tech. To alleviate the cast spam and snowball effect, my take would be to give a multiplier to the SB earned by shooting down Flying Thingy with AA. Flying Thingy, I like that. Flying Thingy with AA. Not only to the player, but also percentage to the entire team. This would give a trade-off aspect to CAS. Spawning mindlessly planes and helis would allow the enemy team more respawns they would not have if you play ground vehicles. This would also be logical in a pure strategical sense. Dedicating air power to the battle means the supply chain is under less stress, and that allows for more troops to get to the front. Also, the menace of giving off nukes by spamming planes would be hilarious. Have a nice time spading. I will do, you know. Having a bit of fun with it. Yeah, we could try that. Why not? It sounds like a fun idea. I don't know how much it should give SP wise, but it really shouldn't give that much. Because, I mean, when the Veek was VTing around the place, a lot of people would run the IKV91 and then the Veek. and you'd be able to get so many points with the Veek to spawn in the nuke. But I do kind of like the idea of like a team-wide SP thing, you know, especially as a counter, because one of the problems we have right now, like if you have a look at like Arcade, right? If your team is doing well, then you get more artillery points. If your team has more caps, or if your team is doing better, if you don't do anything, you still get more artillery stuff, right? At least that's how it used to work. I don't know if it still does now. But this whole like win more mentality that War Thunder has kind of sucks. And it would be nice if there was some aspects of it which were changed, so you wouldn't have as much winning more stuff. And that would be one of them. I mean, that sounds pretty fun. I'd like to give that a go. That'd be cool. But as I said, maybe the only problem I have with like stuff like that is people not using their brains, and that's more of just like a general War Thunder issue. Like, put it like this: there's been a lot of games that I've played on the battle scenario, so the one that we're actually playing right now, like the one where you need like, you know, 60 kills to win basically, or you know, don't die 60 times. Where you would have, like in the old system, or even now, you have like 100 tickets left, right? So, and you'd be like, don't die, right? You don't have to push forward, you don't have to do anything, or maybe like you're ahead by like 500 tickets. So you have like 5 kills ahead. So if you just stay still and you relax, and you play defensive, you win. The amount of people in War Thunder who will just barrel forward and not look at their surroundings, not see what's going on, just dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee, and just wander ahead is nuts. It's actually frightening how many people are not able to read like a map situation or to read what the hell is going on around them. And that happens a lot in War Thunder. So the only issue I would have from a situation like that is people actually realizing what they were doing. Hey Zero, nice to see you, man. Hopefully you're doing good. Happy Sunday. So yeah, that would be my only problem with it. If, you know, as I said, if people actually realize that they are causing these things and that they have this gameplay changes come in and you have to like playing around it. Because yeah, it would just be a pain basically from no fault of your own. People just keep feeding the enemy team and you are just having to deal with the mess that is around. You already kind of have that, you know, with the cast element, and maybe this could be a good counter to it, which is why I kind of like the idea. But it also could be just as I said, an absolute mess. So, yeah, it's funny to think about. There we go. Nice. But yeah, why not? Like, let's give it a go. This suggestion is a hell of a lot better than many I've seen. So, I mean, the easy way of doing it, as I said, is just moving the SP costs. But if we don't want to do that, want to make it a bit more technical, let's do it. Yeah, literally just hold W towards the spawn. Like, just keep going. Forward, forward, forward. You know, no thought towards anything. And you see it a lot, like, in the game. And it's very annoying. I wish it was different, and I wish, you know, there was a bit of tactical play, but, you know, if you want that, you go and play, like, tournament stuff and things like that. But even then, it's just repetition, right? So maybe that's not where the fun is. And we have Maxwell. Hey, Tech. Hello. I'd like your thoughts on an issue I found lately. On multiple tech trees, France for example, there's a big gap of interest. Okay, let me explain. After the 7.7 tanks like the AMX-50 and the Lorraine and all, there isn't much that I'd like aside from top tier. There are many nations I see this in. After the M47, for example, I'm not interested in the American tree before the Abrams. Oh, right, okay, so yeah, even though there are vehicles in those areas, you don't really want to play them because you're not that interested in them, but you feel like you have to go through them in order to get to the next set, right? Yeah, that's a problem I've seen a lot with people, and if I'm 100% honest with you, I've absolutely no idea how to fix that. Because that's, you know, a personal problem, right? For me, I get I don't have like any significant ties to certain vehicles, but there are certain vehicles I do like to try compared to others. But there are also vehicles out there that I just get absolutely sick and tired of playing. Like when it comes to moving them around and stuff. Like it gets to a point where it's just not fun for me to touch them, so I have to go and give something else a go. But for a lot of people, it's like, okay, I'm focusing on getting this vehicle, and, you know, I have to get through all of these other vehicles to get to it, and that kind of annoys them. And the solution to that is to stop caring about a specific vehicle, but, you know, that's not really a great solution, is it? Because a lot of people fixate on specific vehicles and, you know, the ones that they want to use, so that's not really going to work too well. My thing personally, the way to do it, as I said, is just take one vehicle at a time, and then every time you complete the vehicle, you should actually have a situation where you unlock the next one, and then you focus on that, and then, you know, you eventually get to your goal. But if you're looking for a way of, like, getting rid of what would be classed as dead weight in a tech tree, there's not really a way of doing that, unfortunately. Like, you're still gonna have to maybe play through it, or, as many people have said, you know, premiums are the answer to stuff like that, but I think that can actually be more aggravating than other stuff. So for me, it's a tough one, that. And as I said, it really can only be changed on personal mentalities, like the way that people see the game and the way that people approach it. But that is not great, you know. So then we have House of Schmidt. Hey Tech, Gaijin's dev blog regarding the Fox 3 playtest / dev server stated the following. Going by our internal tests, air-dueling situations between a small group of players in a battle using these type of missiles led to some very interesting gameplay, with new tactical approaches created. To me, this statement indicates Gaijin is flirting with smaller teams or less player density for top-tier aviation. From your comments on 16v16, you seem to think less player density at top tier is a mistake. Why? Is Gaijin's own devlog incorrect? Right, you are interpreting a quote, and you are taking something which is completely different. It is meaning they are testing different scenarios, and they are seeing different results. Right? That does not mean that one is better than the other. Number two, I don't care if games are 16-16, 12v12, 6v6, 8v8 at top tier. My questions always, when it comes to these topics, is please look at the other side. The way that you improve your arguments is by looking at the other side, by questioning why you believe the things that you believe, and why is it better than others. The problem I have with all of these conversations is I do not see how making smaller teams increases the enjoyability from an individual perspective in high-tier air. It means that there are less missiles flowing around, right? Okay? So that is a positive because there's less things to focus on. But what it also means is squadrons have a much higher, what's the word? They have a much higher impact on the games. If you actually put it down to, let's say, an 8v8 level, right, so you half it, now you can have a team which has 2 full squadrons on it, and the enemy team can be a set of individuals. That sucks. And for some reason, it never gets brought up when it comes to these conversations. If you fix that, then we can start having the conversations about the other stuff, right? The other thing has to be, why is it that the argument, which is the 12v12 versus 16v16 argument, why is it that 16v16 is having exactly the same argument points and argument kind of logical like steps as the 12 versus 12 argument? When 12 versus 12 was a thing in War Thunder at high tier aviation, people said the same stuff about the idea of having smaller teams which would influence, where each individual would influence the game more. Why is it that now we have 16v16, the arguments haven't changed at all? And also, when we go back to 12 versus 12, how do the arguments change? Because they're the same arguments that we had previously before. So if we reduce the amount of numbers back to a 12 versus 12, which is what it was for about 8 years or 9 years, where people were still saying these ideas where 12 versus 12 was too many players, do we ever get to a point where there is a perfect amount of players, right? Where is the golden child? Where is the golden goose for that? So that's 2 points. And then the third point is what happens if I'm spading a vehicle? What happens if I'm not in a fully spaded vehicle? Do I just get beaten up? Because in a situation where you have less players on each team, that does not increase the amount of area that you can fight at. Because no matter if it's 12 versus 12, or 16 versus 16, or 8 versus 8, or 6v6, everybody just goes to the center of the map. Right? That has been shown many times over with many different amounts of players and configurations in aviation at top tier. People gravitate towards going in straight lines to attack each other. Good morning, Disciple. So if I'm in a vehicle that is not fully spaded, right, and I'm trying to grind it out, which is the vast majority of the time that I play the game when I play these vehicles, unless I'm doing like Page of the History or something like that, how am I allowed to play? How am I able to grind modifications? How am I able, in that scenario, to ever have a positive impact on the game? Because I'm just going to run into a bunch of people who are in the best vehicles, who are going to be spaded and are going to annihilate me, and you've given me no room to be able to actually have players to go after who may not be, you know, focused on the correct things, or it actually creates more space because more people go towards the center. Maybe you can go around the side. But in this scenario, where people aren't or don't have as many things to focus on, right, they're going to see you every time. So it isn't that I'm against 16 versus 16 or 12 versus 12 or 10 versus 10 or whatever the number is. I just want answers to these questions. And I don't ever get answers to any of these questions. Instead, what I get is just people telling me, well, it'll be better because there's less missiles running around. Okay, well, what about those 3 points there? I just need answers to those. That's it. I don't need any of the other stuff because I've heard the rest of it over and over and over again. It's a very, very simple idea. Less people on each team means less to focus on, therefore improve gameplay because you don't have to be swiveling your head all over the place. I understand that, right? My question is, how far do you take it? What do you do about the squads in a realistic, which can match up against individual players? And also, how do you deal with the stock syndrome stuff? Fix those 3, and then you can do however many number of people you want when it comes to the stuff. Right? Simple as. I'm neither for or against. I just want these simple things answered, and I just can't get them answered by anybody. And when I can't get things like that, which are fundamental to how these things are going to work, answered, it worries the fuck out of me. Right? But if there are answers, alright then, just do it. Why not? Might as well give it a go, right? But also, as I said, you are looking at the wrong thing. That is a quote from after. Like, after they implemented the 16v16 stuff. I asked for you last week to find me a quote or to find me a reason why they bumped it up to 16 versus 16 in the first place. Because as we talked about, 16 versus 16 is a very recent thing in terms of War Thunder history, right? It's only over the last, what, year, 2 years. So if you could find the statements that they made about why they bumped it up, right, to increased, or if you can get a community manager, like just ask them a question and ask them and find out, that would be fantastic. And then you can start going from there. Because by saying, is Gaijin's own devlog incorrect, is reading into a quote, but for some reason, you will not find quotes about why they changed it in the first place. And read into them if you want. You know? Have fun. Only logical way is 1 versus 1, then you can't have squads? No, squads are fine. Like, squads are okay. Like, squads are fine in every single game mode. You know which one they're not okay in? Air Realistic. Because it doesn't match squads versus squads. You can have a whole team of squadded up people on one team in Realistic, and a whole team of solos on the other team. Doesn't happen in any other game mode, by the way. Doesn't happen in Naval, doesn't happen in Ground. But for some reason, it happens in Realistic. And that's not fair. Fix that, and then once again, we can start having conversations. But nobody's pushing for these things. Instead, we just try and do the standard crap, which is change number of people. So yeah. Go and find the quotes. There are plenty of them out there why they changed it. Oh my god. And then we can start talking about that stuff. And then we can start working out why they did it. Because if you find out why they did it, you can come up with a counter. You can come up with, okay, so you did it to fix this issue. Sounds good. Right. Well, let's find a way of fixing that issue while also reducing the amount of people that are in the game. Okay? Alright, sounds good. But without that, without the reason why they changed it in the first place, you'll never know how to fix it. Hey Sneaky, nice to see you. I see you too, Alex. Hopefully everything's good. The international incident is Freeman is coming out of hiding today, or at least he should be doing, so that should be fun. Then we have Adam Kozak. Hi Tech, keep up the good. I will do. We'll keep up the good. Oh dear. We're getting shot from every angle though. What's your opinion on the mixed MM at top tier? I personally don't like it because I don't play a unique nation to just fight the same nation. That's why I also don't like them adding copy-paste vehicles to other trees like the British Gripen. In my opinion, not every country needs a top tier just for the sake of having it. Want a Gripen, play Sweden. If we had that mentality, then there would be nations which wouldn't be allowed to really have anything. Like think about Italy, right? So Italy top tier is F-15. Is it F? No, not F-15. Sorry, F-16. Then the Harrier, then the Tornado. So the F-16 is American. The Tornado is a joint project. So let's just say it goes to Britain for some reason. And then also you have the Harrier. So the Harrier is also American. Okay, so, alright. They can't have any of those, because none of them are Italian. Okay, let's go the next tier down. F-104s. Oh shit. They're American too. Well, that's a problem. Oh, well, the AMX. Well, that's not Italian either. So now what you have is you have not just like a top tier not being there. You don't have any of the vehicles below it either. Your end of the line would be the G91. Now, because there are different game modes in War Thunder, including ground and naval, but specifically ground in the sense, you need vehicles for ground to create balanced lineups, right? If you only play Air Realistic, then it doesn't really matter. But if you play any other game mode in the game, it is important to have these vehicles to be able to fill out your lineups, right? So it's just one of those where it wouldn't functionally work for a lot of nations, because not just from like a point of view of, you know, other nations making the stuff that they use, it would cripple massive parts of the game if we had that idea. Like, take away all of the foreign vehicles from most of the nations in the game, they become completely unfunctioning. Like, or dysfunctional. A lot of nations in War Thunder gained popularity because of the simple fact that they had access to import or exported technology, right? Yeah, like, I mean, Israeli Air would just start off with, what, the Kafir? And even then, the Kafir is based off the Mirage, right? So, I don't know what you do with that. But yeah, it's, I mean, Israeli ground also wouldn't exist, apart from the Makavas. So yeah, I don't really know how that would work. The thing is, if the good thing about War Thunder is the fact that every nation does have, you know, its unique stuff, but it also has its stuff that makes it functional to play. Because if you only had the unique stuff in these nations, they would not be functioning, or they would not be functioning, but they mainly just wouldn't be fun. Because you wouldn't be able to create lineups, you know, you wouldn't be able to really do anything with it. So yeah, if you massively limited people in terms of that way, I don't think it would work very well. The other thing is pretty simple too. The reason why you have mixed MM at top tier is because people are focusing on playing one specific nation. So if you actually forced people somehow to play different nations, then you wouldn't have mixed matchmaking. The matchmaking is completely based on what people are playing at the time, not based on anything else. So you have to work out why those people are playing those things, and is there something that you can offer in a different area to make them have a better time, and to make them have, you know, have access to something that they will enjoy more. It's the same reason why America is so dominant in a lot of the realistic brackets, and it's straight up because of the fact that they have a ton of vehicles everywhere, and they always have something to play, and they have a lot of meta-defining vehicles. So yeah, like, what do you do in that type of regard? Like, do you set it up in a way so you just straight up remove all those vehicles? How do you decide when a vehicle is also a foreign vehicle? That's also another one. So, for example, the Hungarian Gripen is different from the Swedish one. The British Gripen, or the South African Gripen as it is also different than the Swedish one. They have different weapons, you know, they have different stuff to them. So how does that work in the head? Like, how do you distinguish what is different between these different things? Are all the F-104s the same, for example? Should they all be in the American tech tree? It's opening up a hell of a can of worms, which you just don't really want to work, right? So the main thing to think about during this is, instead of thinking about removing things from certain nations, which is never going to happen nowadays, because if you do that, you're just going to annoy so many different people, and at the same time, like, it means that other game modes just get nuked like instantly, which aren't called realistic. And the second point is, where do you draw the line between a vehicle being different? Like, are all the Shermans the same? Are all the F-104s the same? Are all the P-51s the same? Like, how does that work? I don't know. Hey, TK, nice to see you. Hopefully you're doing good. Hopefully everything's alright. Hopefully you're doing well. And everything is okay. Day's been good so far. We did a leg workout today, so my thighs are on fire. But feeling okay. I ended up looking at my toe yesterday, and it's super bruised, because I hammered it against my stationary bike by accident. So yeah, that one's that one's gonna need a few days of repair. It's black and blue, and about twice the size it should be, so that's quite fun. Am I seal clubbing? No, we're doing the tech talk, and also at the same time doing the pages of history. So the page of history is for Crete, which it's a bit of an awkward one, so we're doing the Matilda. Let's see. You want a rush game mode? Attackers, defenders capture a beachhead, land, sea, and air, and the map expands when attackers cap. Sure, why not? Let's do it. You get to be on the defense. I get all the crazy toys. I think you could say, did the country operating the vehicle actually add modifications or something like that to it? Well, I mean, what about if a country gets a vehicle which is exported to them, but modifications are made by the host country of the vehicle for them? And also, it doesn't solve the issue, right? The issue is he believes he's running into a lot of copy-paste vehicles. Well, technically, as I said, those 3 Gripens are different. All the F-15s are different to each other. And they all have modifications for their specific nations. But he sees them as copy-paste. So, don't work. Same with all like the F-16s, right? You just received the ZTZ camo? Yeah, I got mine too, man. Pretty sleek. Quite nice to see. So then we have Sunburnt Medusa. Hello, Tech. Love the Tech Talks. And sorry for the lengthy comment. That's always good. It's fine. Like, it's been nice to go through some of them. I usually don't comment on a lot of things about the Metro War Thunder, but now I have something worth sharing. Because I know that how I play War Thunder is different from how a lot of other people do. I also really like M1 Tank Platoon, GHPC, Steel Armor, Blaze of War, and so on. So obviously I like more realistic side of War Thunder. Yeah, like the simulated side, right? But that is just it. The fact that War Thunder is so customizable to how the individual wants to play is exactly what has kept me playing it for years. Since 2016. You can turn off player markers and force yourself to ID vehicles. You can drive tanks with manual transmission. You can only fly vehicles, only drive tanks, or only sail ships if you don't want to engage with the other aspects of the game. Not to mention arcade, realistic, and simulated game modes. You can even play in VR. Yeah, it's kind of nuts, isn't it? There's so much stuff in it. With a lot of mechanics people want to see in War Thunder, my thought is very often, yes, add it and make it optional. Some players want intense tinnitus and their screen to shake when they get hit. Some people want their optics to have cracked if damaged, and some people want to play night battles. One of those is already optional, and there is no reason why 16v16 or 12v12 air battles also could not be an option. Of course, there has to be a line drawn somewhere. Not everything can be optional. I already handicap myself with a lot of things in War Thunder on purpose, because that is what I find fun. And I don't complain about being at a disadvantage, because I know I've done it to myself, and I know how to play around it. Oh, what do you think? Should we have more optional features in the game? And how do you think that would affect the game? Would people even care that options exist? If you want to add all these things, sure. The way to do them is to do them as options and then have the option turned off. So therefore, the player has to make a obvious choice that they want to turn on these things in order to have, you know, them affect their gameplay, right? Like generally, I think that's not that if you're gonna implement all these like seen as like historical things or seen as these like general opinions, which would negatively affect most people's games and the way that they work, yeah, you should make it an optional thing, and it would keep both sides happy. The question that has to be raised every time this thing goes, though, is, well, actually, no, there's like 2 separate questions. Number 1 is how many people actually care about it, right? And how much development time should be devoted to that thing. That's a tough one, right? And with some things, it might not be a lot, right? So, for example, if your gunner is knocked out, maybe you could black out the optic, right? To make it a bit more realistic until he gets replaced by somebody. Maybe you could do something like that. Would that be a lot of development time? I got no idea, but probably not a lot. But when people are asking for like these massive, huge setups in terms of like realism, then that is where it becomes a bit of an issue. So you have to work out how many people would actually want something like that. Because you're right that War Thunder has a metric ton of options in it already, and they've done a fantastic job of marrying the idea of an arcadey game and also a game which is, you know, as, also has a fully simulated experience if you wanted to, right? That's why it's done so well over the years. But yeah, the question you have to ask is how many people want it, right? Now, that's not... Once you can work that out, then you can work out the next step, And the next step is pretty simple. It is how many people say that they want it and actually don't want it. That is really tough. That one right there is really tough. And I'll explain it, okay? Hey, Rubel, nice to see you. Oh, you went to Vienna? Nice, man. That's cool. There is a lot of people who want change in War Thunder for the sake of change. Okay? And I've met many of them. The dozer effect is probably the best way of putting it. I'd really need to make a video about all of these things. But Dozer, or Dozer 45, I believe his name was a guy who constantly asked for a specific vehicle. And he did this for like a year, 2 years. And he just kept asking for it over and over again. Every comment section, every like post, it was always like, hey, you know, give me this vehicle. I can't remember what the vehicle is. Someone else already, you know, knows it. Knows what it was. It was probably like the Mirage or something like that. I'm pretty sure it was the Mirage. And then the vehicle came out, and everyone's like, hey, Dozer, your vehicle. Isn't that awesome? He played it like 10 battles. And then just didn't play it again. So he spent a year, 2 years, asking for something, talking about how great and how he would love to play it, and, you know, looking forward to it. And then it was added. He played it like 10 times. So that part of that conversation is the tough one, right? How many people are asking for stuff because they just want new things, or they just want the game to feel slightly different? And that is like, unless you have like access to people's brains, that's a really tough one to get right. But in terms of adding these things, in terms of adding these things as optional stuff, I'd be all for it. Just make sure the option is off by default, right? So then people have to make an active change to be able to put it on. Yeah, just like the night battle stuff. It's automatically off by default, and if people want it, they can do it. And then, if you find out a ton of people do it, maybe then you could actually integrate it into the systems. But you just got to make sure about these things, because, once again, you don't want to make it so there are different like levels of matchmaking for different setups, because then queue times get longer and people get annoyed, and that's the whole thing, right? Like that was also another thing I learned over the years. Like queue time, especially when you're talking about like modes and how they're set up, like 12v12, 16v16, if you have just like two different like matchmakings, obviously that's going to affect the queue time. And that's one thing you don't really want to screw with. Because if you have a look at whenever people talk about Naval, the first thing that always comes up from somebody who's trying to be funny, haha, is, oh, well, you know, does anybody play Naval? I've been sat in a queue for like 5 minutes. And it's like, yeah, okay. And that's like one of the first things that gets brought up every single time. The queue time. And people don't realize how much it affects stuff. Back in the day, there was like always these posts about, oh, I'd wait an extra 2 minutes if it meant better matchmaking, yada yada yada. And you'll be amazed how many people won't wait 2 minutes, and also amazed how many people believe it would somehow just be like an extra 2 minutes. Like it might be 4, it might be 5, it might be 1. It's very hard to know these things until you actually implement them. So yeah, it's a bit all over the place, which is why taking chances on these things can be a bit rough. So as long as they're not forced on people, I'm good with it. Simple as. But the moment you start trying to force things on things is where I get a little bit, you know, cautious. By the way, if you want night battles to be pitch black like they used to, you can toggle the nights from day option under color correction. Yeah, in the post FX, right? This turns the usual dusk to pitch black. Black darkness and doesn't affect MVDs. And for the people who think night battles are dark enough, there's an optional feature just for you. Unfortunately, you can't remove the blinding flares. Yeah. Yeah, like maybe that would be like an interesting video idea to do. Like you could do you could do a video which is basically talking about how what's the word I'm looking for? You could basically do a video which is like, okay, you want this in the game? Well, here is how you create it in the game already. So, oh, you want more realistic night battles? Okay, this is the settings that you use. Oh, you want this effect to happen? Okay, well, this is what you use. Or, you know, you can use like filters or whatever for NVIDIA or AMD to try and simulate these things. Maybe that's an idea. That could happen. The other thing I would like to also mention about stuff like GHPC and M1 Tank Platoon and stuff, I used to actually play a lot of those in like those types of games in like the early 2000s, mid 2000s. I had a really good time with them, and if I went back to them, I probably would too, because you know they're right up my alley. But also one of the things that specifically GHPC has taught me, and also if you have a look at many others, is the fact that the community out there that is actually super interested in a game like that is incredibly minor compared to something like War Thunder. Which is why if you do these like grand sweeping changes that affect the gameplay for everybody in a more negative way, that, or at least they deem more negative, I should say, it's gonna have a huge, crazy effect. Like on Gonna Heat PC, it has, you know, thousands, maybe, you know, a couple thousand or maybe a bit more per month playing it. War Thunder has millions every day. So you gotta be a bit careful with these, you know, big sweeping changes. They could say, what do you prefer, 12 versus 12 or 16 v 16? Based on what you choose, we'll try to put you in that lobby. But if you won't find a lobby, we'll put you in the other mode. Yeah, I mean, if you know how night battles works, that's what they do. At the highest echelon of the game, what you can do is you can toggle on night battles. I think it's above like 11-0 or something. And what ends up happening is it'll give you like the matchmaking for night battles, and then it will put you like in for like a minute the queue time for night battles, and if it finds enough players, it'll throw you in a night battle, and if it doesn't find enough players, then you just go into standard matchmaking. And those night battles are like 6v6 most of the time, like when I've seen them at least. Hey, we're still up at 207. Nice to see you. So yeah, like if they want to put that into top tier, yeah, sounds good. Postscriptum tanking is one of the coolest experiences. Don't think it would translate well to War Thunder. Well, Postscriptum stopped development because they didn't have enough people playing it. And yeah, it's that's multi-crew ideas is something that's been brought up in War Thunder for a long time. Pretty much since the game came out, because there was a decent chunk of people who played stuff like IL-2 back in the day and wanted stuff like that, but yeah, it never happened because once again, it's a lot of development time for something a minority wants, and it sucks that that's the case. There was a key thing in the War Thunder Nostalgia videos we did this weekend. There was a key part of it which I thought was super important, and it was the part where Kirill Yudintsev, who was the creative director, and I believe still is, of Gaijin and War Thunder and all that stuff, he turned around and said, we need to make sure that the basics of the game are sorted first. So the game modes are sorted first, and then we can start thinking of expanding in different areas. And that's the key to all of this, right? Which is why, you know, you had a lot of work on game modes when the game started, and now you have a lot of work in other areas, you know, which focus on different things. It's just how it goes, you know. Just all about priorities. So we have Not Sean. Honestly, I'd love to see more Korean War planes. Many innovative vehicles and aircraft were designed right after the Second World War and post-war before Korea, when they were still even using propeller aircraft for attack missions. The Korean War also isn't too hard to grasp. North Korea invaded South Korea to unite the whole of Korea under a communist rule. The US joined and pushed the North Koreans almost to China. Big bad China said the fuck and joined the war on the North Korea side. They began fucking up US forces and drew at a stalemate and decided on a truce which holds today, but the war still continues oddly. Yeah, like from a like if you break down the Korean War, it's very simple. But what I'm saying is nobody cares about it. Like that's the difference, right? Like the thing as we've talked about, you know, hey Papa Stalin, nice to see you too, Lucky Strike. Like it isn't the fact that people like don't know that the Korean War happened. It's that they don't care. And this is shown in like all of media, right? It's you don't have a lot of movies from the Korean War unless they're Chinese propaganda movies, right? Or something like the more recent one, which completely bombed the last period or last year. I went to go see it. Was it Invictus or something like that? It was very good. It was about the first black pilot. But yeah, it just bombed. But the problem is people just don't care about it, and you have a war which happened a few years earlier, which was one of the largest scale wars in human history. so yeah, it is straight up just like a supply demand thing, like but from a game / historical perspective, and it's crazy to think about, right? And yeah, there was a lot of cool vehicles from the Korean War, and we have a lot of them in the game, right? People don't know about them, but we have them. There's a ton of them. They could definitely add more. That would also be cool to see, and I'm sure we will see more. Just like we saw like the explosion of like American strike aircraft, right? The AM-1, the AD-2, the AU-1, the AD-4, all of those things which were designed in that kind of period of time, not specifically for Korea, but you know, kind of filling the gap for different vehicles. So yeah, there is many, you know, different things which are there. Only if there was MASH music. Well, wasn't MASH Vietnam or was that Korea? I can't remember. Like I haven't watched MASH in like 10 years. I need to rewatch it. It was really fun. Like they mixed the two ideas really well in MASH. I honestly cannot remember like even the war that it was set in. It was so long ago. Wow, I need to watch that again. I really do. Fantastic show. But yeah, it's just an interest thing. And also once again, it's just one of those that we talked about with Enlisted before. There is always, and even just the previous comment, there's always this idea of just keep adding new stuff, keep adding this, keep adding this, keep adding this, and you know everything will just constantly expand. But at some point, people are going to turn around and go, well, I don't really care about any of this stuff. And that's what we're seeing with a lot of nations in game already. So, bit of a problem. It'd be cool to do. I mean, I've always liked the idea. MASH was Korean. Oh, well, there you go then. It would be really cool to do a kind of a video on specific variants of vehicles in the game and where they came from. I think that would be quite cool. Maybe I'll do that in the future. Who knows? It's a decent chunk of work, but it would be fine to do. Then we have the Snazzy Comet. Hi, Mr. Tech. Hello, Mr. Snazzy Comet. Nice to see you. Welcome to the Gong Show. We don't know yet if it's all dead or not. Must wait. Oh, well, that's not good. Oh, Jesus. We're getting attacked. And we have Phil. Hi, Tech. How you doing? Also, I think they should add World War I aircraft. What do you think? Yeah, I'd be fine with it. You know? I would generally be okay with those types of aircraft in the game. I think it would actually be quite fun. The only thing I would do is I'd add it as an expansion to the game. So I wouldn't add it as a rank 1. Okay, people start off with World War I aircraft. I would add it as a secondary expansion to War Thunder, called like, I don't know, War Thunder Barons or something, which gives you a bunch of like PvE stuff, gives you some PvP stuff, but mainly PvE, and it's a way of getting a bunch of these like iconic vehicles, and you just set it up as like, you know, you pay $10 and You get access to a bunch of challenges. If you complete the challenges, you get the vehicles. Hey, Tugnuts, nice to see you. Hopefully you're doing good. Happy Sunday, and yeah, we're doing Tech Talk, because we didn't do it the previous days. It's going pretty good. Overall, can't be mad. Doing okay. And we have Charlie Harris. So what's your opinion on Naval in War Thunder? Because I believe that Naval can still be improved upon in many ways. Like, for example, I've heard a few people throw around the idea of playable aircraft carriers, which probably wouldn't be a bad idea. It would be a terrible idea. I mean, as I always say, you don't know these things until you try it. That's a really terrible idea, and it also screams that you have never tried heroin. Also, let's see. And of course, the usual answer, submarines, which honestly I would never be against the idea of submarines being added into Naval, because it would be pretty much add a whole new dimension of combat, and it would give the destroyers something to do. The destroyers already have something to do, but yes, it would give you something like to sort out. And would enable the introduction of the really famous naval vehicles. Like for submarines, you've got the Type 21 electric boat, and of course the I-400, which is the only submarine that can carry aircraft that can be used in an offensive role. And of course, for aircraft carriers, there's only one that comes to mind, and that would be the German Graf Zeppelin. I feel like I'm being fucked with. Yeah, aircraft carriers would be a bad idea. It's been tried in PvP games before. It's never worked. It's either been boom or bust, which doesn't work very well. Submarines, sure, add them. They're going to add submarines anyway. So it's just a matter of time and how they implement them, because they don't really fit in the standard game modes. So that's going to be the challenge. Luckily, I don't have to... I don't have to make those decisions, so that's always good. It would be cool to get stuff like the Graf Zeppelin, though, as carriers on maps. You know, you could implement it realistically too, because it was basically just a flat board. But yeah, the dimension of combat thing worries me, because changes in dimensions of combat can be fine. But they can also kind of eliminate other dimensions of combat, which kind of get annihilated. So, for example, the moment they added guided bombs to certain BRs meant that dumb bombs were obviously a lot worse than they were before, meaning that counters had to come in for the guided bombs, and that means that it's harder to use dumb bombs, right? Same with like rockets or missiles or whatever you want to call it. It's just how it goes. So, yeah, it's... I'm sure all these things will happen in the future, because of course War Thunder has to be a constantly expanding game, but that doesn't mean that they will be good. So then we have Manuel Guedes. Hi Tech. Hello. Long post, but Tech Talks that are below the 3-hour mark don't really count. I want to address two subjects that you've talked about. The first is about SL. You said that after the economy changes last year, people who have premium time shouldn't have problems with SL. That is not my case, because I'm one of those weirdos who spades entire tech trees. The premium time solved the problem of battles where I made a loss. However, premium time proportionately gives more research bonus than SL bonus. Yep. Also, there was considerable amounts of foldering vehicles in the tech tree. This halved the necessary research, but the SL to buy the vehicles modifications remain the same. Yeah, which sucks. I talked about that at the time. It's really bad. As did the training of the crews. The result is that the SL gains can't keep up with the speed of the research. For instance, I've run out of vehicles to research in the US Aviation tech tree when I still had the top 9 jets to spade. Well, that's always been the case. Like, vehicles with higher BR have higher SL bonuses, but also everything is more expensive. So the only way I have a positive balance of SL is when I play spaded vehicles. That's fair, but like for me, I'm in a similar boat to you, right? Like, I always get to a point where I end a tech tree and I have way more vehicles to spade than I actually, have than I need to research. But yeah, it's the foldering thing really stuck in my head, because the foldering thing was kind of rude actually. Because what they've done with it is they've halved the research cost, which is positive. But they didn't move any of the SL costs, and, on top of it, the modification costs in research and SL are the same. So it's easier to research the vehicle by researching it, but it's as hard to spade. So this has created an imbalance in the way that you actually push forward with these things. So that's a bit rude. They should definitely fix that, because that is the wrong way around, at least in my opinion. And then the other part of it, which is kind of annoying, as you pointed out, is the fact that even though they've made it so, you can't lose SL, there is now more SL expenses around the place. So, yeah, it sucks. They should really have a think about moving that around. The second subject is the number of players in RRB. There we go. It's not just players who want to carry the team that don't like 16-player teams. I also don't like it when I need to spade strike jets, which it's only viable in this game mode. I had bad experience with many of the US strike jets due to the lack of flight performance or decent missiles. As these planes are very slow in most battles, I arrive too late to bomb the bases because my teammates already destroyed them all. Then the game ends, either by my team killing all opponents or by being destroyed by enemies that I can't counter. Waiting for bases to respawn most of the time doesn't work because the opponents can find me by activating orders. Also, I can't go for ground targets because in almost all the maps they're clustered in the center of the map like a huge spotlight. Fighting other planes is very difficult. No US strike aircraft can keep up with the speed and maneuverability of enemy fighters at the same BR, with the exception of the A-10. The strike jets only have rear aspect missiles, and the flight performance isn't good enough to put me in a position to fire the missile with success. There is a reason why in real life strike aircraft isn't used in situations where they don't have air superiority. Maybe the different BR for each game mode that will be implemented in the next update might mitigate this problem, but the lack of ground targets and their placement in the center of the map will remain as the biggest obstacle for spading these vehicles. Yeah, I agree. The changes that they made well, first of all, when these vehicles were added, I talked about the fact that they were going to be the most unbalanced vehicles in the game. Because a lot of these vehicles were added, so such as the A7, the A10, all of these types of things, they were added when the game was 12 versus 12. And they had all of the same problems which you have today, right? They even had an air spawn. And it meant that for a period of time, stuff like the F-105 was pretty crazily broken. It was also lower BR, right? So once they removed the air spawn, and then afterwards, they started adding more of these strike aircraft with even more ridiculous armaments on them, it just increased the imbalance of a lot of these sets of vehicles. So for me, hopefully the BR changes affect these things in a positive way, but also at the same time, reducing the amount of people on the map does not fix this issue, because this issue existed even when the game was 12 versus 12. So unless you want to go even lower, to like 8 versus 8 or 6 versus 6, you can do that. But then it's more down to team composition, and you're running into the same issue once again. So for me, this type of issue is not solved by the amount of players who are around the place. People are always just going to do the meta things, right? Like, let's say you're playing, like, I don't know, the A7, and you reduce the amount of people on your team to 12v12 or 8v8. There's still going to be 4 F4Ss. There's still, because it's the most efficient way that people see to grind the tech tree. So you're going to see 4 F4Ss hitting the bases anyway. And then you're like, okay, well, just increase the amount of bases. Yeah, you can do that. But now, if you have 6 F4Ss, or if you have, if you reduce the amount that you get from each of the bases that you destroy, then people are just going to find the next gimmick to try and grind stuff out. So it just creates like this thing of just trying to get research over and over again, and then it just takes away from the gameplay, which sucks. It would be nice if map variety was different. It would be nice if we get away from the shipyard mentality, which is, the COD shipyard map. But I don't think we will, because there's too many people who are focused on just doing the general grind stuff. Hopefully the BR stuff will help the most. That's the only that's really the only way that we can see this going forward. Yeah, I'm just getting a call, so I'll be 2 seconds. Hello? No, he didn't. Alright, there we go. But yeah, we'll have to see after next update what happens. And then we can try and maybe have a look at modifying maps or see what they even decide to do in terms of like that setup, you know? Yeah, I know I wasn't muted. Yeah, it was my bad. I couldn't click the mute button. My hotkeys have disappeared again. They've decided to leave. So Streamlabs updated itself and now I have to reset everything again, which isn't very fun. Oh well, we can do that. Then we have the only Len. Hey, Tech and chat. Hopefully all is well. Yeah, we're doing okay, I think, is the way to put it. Nothing to blabber on this week, although there has been one thing weighing on me ever since I started playing. You know the Foch that has the 50mm? It has a notch on the lower part of its mini turret. The gun can't depress to that little notch. It bothers you. That was a vehicle I was playing the other day. Which one was it? It was some kind of autocannon vehicle. It might have been the Bradley. No, it can't have been the Bradley. It was something that I was playing that had a really annoying exhaust on it. It might have been the ZTZ-88, where there's like a little area where the gun depression is not the full gun depression because it's stuck on like a vent or something. And stuff like that is really annoying on vehicles. The Tiger H back in the day, what it used to have on it is it used to have like headlights on the front of it. Because the Tiger H model we have now is not the one which was actually put in the game to start with, which is quite funny. But that one had like headlights, and it meant that you couldn't depress the gun if you looked over each of the angles, and it was annoying as all hell. It sucked. Also, one thing, you made a video on US 90 M60. Sure enough, reading through the comments, found the yep, Chinese M60 is just out of place comment. Although, that's not what intrigued me. There's a comment that said, oh, AMX-30B2, bad no stabilizer, and some guy was defending it, was fast, and has cool nifty stuff that other tanks of the BR don't get. The thing is, the 30B2 and the Brennus have the worst engine power of the AMX-30s. To compensate, it does have a better powertrain of 10 gears instead of 5, but to say it's quick, not gonna lie, Chief, I can feel it chugging behind the other AMX-30s. I do play them a lot, and yeah, it confuses me how we downgraded engine power over an upgrade. Might have been, you know, might have been cost. If it's the case of the M40OD being fuel economy, I'd be upset. Anyway, rant over, AMX-30B2 still a lovely tank and will remain one of my faves. Thanks all Tech and have a good one. Yeah, we'll do. I enjoy the AMX-30s too. I think they're criminally underrated as vehicles. I've had a good time with them whenever I played them. I think nowadays they're probably in a bit of a worse spot than they were, but I think they're fun to play. Let's see. What is about? And we have Jerry. Hello, Tech and Timestamper. Thank you for your service, Timestamper. I wish Gaijin would make flamethrowers more effective. Currently, half the time, you can't even kill a Russian milk truck with its exposed crew. Flames should be able to destroy engines if the flames are on the engine bay, and lightly armored tanks should get destroyed. Okay. Sorry, I just needed to win that head on because it's the last guy on the team, so. Also, HESH and overpressuring things are stupid. It literally has high explosive in the name. Also, this comment might appear twice because YouTube comments are being annoying again. That's all good. The flamethrowers are a bit of a meme, aren't they? They're they're not really things that are that useful. And I mean, if they decided to add more vehicles in the game with flamethrowers, I think it would be nice to have a few more uses of them, whether it's just creating smoke or whether it's just moving stuff about. But yeah, they are kind of a meme. I will agree with that. They're definitely not up there. The HESH one, sure, why not? You know, just keep every update. We need to supposedly buff HESH every time. So let's just keep doing that over and over again. That's what I hear every single update. So it's one of those things that's quite funny. You know what's funny about this vehicle, by the way? Airman's. I don't even think they gave CCs a test drive of this vehicle. Or at least I didn't get one. Maybe other people did. Who knows? But yeah, there you go. Airman's Yak 3E. The difference between this and the standard one machine gun. This one has 112.7 and 120. The standard Yak 3 has two 12.7s and 120. So there you go. Huge difference. Alright, so then we have MJA. Hi Tech, how's your week? What are your thoughts on the Churchill? It's currently hidden on the tech tree for the players who didn't own it, and I'm glad it is. It's probably the worst reserve destroyer in any naval tech tree. Hell, the damn thing doesn't even have a rangefinder. Yeah, because I don't think they actually updated it when they added in the rangefinder stuff. I wanted to... I want people to get access to it, but obviously not as a starter vehicle. But yeah, the Churchill used to be the starter vehicle for the British. They removed it. First of all, they actually gave it an ahistorical change. Because it never had the 12.7s and the 20s on it, I believe. At least in the configuration they put it in. It only when this vehicle first came out, it only had the 102 and the 3-inch gun, like these two on the front and back. You can't use them at the same time because they're different calibers, so it technically made them primary and secondary. So yeah, it's an awful destroyer. So I'm happy they replaced it with the Vega. The Vega is a lot more fun with the 4-inch guns. But yeah, it's surprising to me that they didn't make this like the French tanks, where if you get, I think, to like rank 2 or rank 3, you actually unlock like these French tanks. So you can actually play them, or like the OS2U Kingfisher. If you like play so much naval for America, you get access to them. But yeah, instead they just said, nah, nobody would want to play this, which is quite funny. Hey, some random, nice to see you. Hopefully you're doing good. But yeah, it's an awful vehicle, and it was a terrible vehicle. It gives you a terrible start to tech trees, and you know, you got to make sure that people have good starts to tech trees so they actually want to play them, instead of the opposite, which is where they just sit there and wonder why they exist as humans, which is sometimes a pretty terrifying prospect. So then we have the next one, which is Ulfred Tierson. Oh, by the way, we've done the Bass of Crete and the Mark of Distinction, so we've done very good. Very happy with our production here. And just have a look at something else to play. Hey Tech, how you doing this week? Overall good, just kind of bored, is probably the way to put it. There hasn't been a lot going on this week, so in terms of like War Thunder stuff, we did get a change log and we did get a few other things. So I've been playing a lot of Man of War 2, which has been really good. I've had a great time with it, and looking forward to playing more of it going forward. I kind of want to complete the crazy campaign that I've been playing, which is very much a nutcase campaign. Like, we basically, Men of War 2 has this conquest mode where you start off at like tier 1 and you can like assault places, and then you have to defend the places from like an army going back and forth. And every time you go up to like the next tier of it, what ends up happening is it's an increase in like technology, right? So the enemy gets more technology and you get more technology. But because of the fact that you are always pushing up, so you are always using worse technology than the enemy. So you're, as if you keep a constant progression, right? So you can be using like tier 2 stuff, and then you're trying to invade into a tier 3 area, and then so on and so forth. And it just means that some of the battles are insane and really tough. Like, I've been playing with Bryce and I've been playing with Freeman, and we got to the level of like 4. Oh boy. Like, it's gonna be a long road ahead, is basically the way that I see that stuff. It's gonna be absolutely nuts in terms of how it all works. So yeah, it's gonna be crazy. The people that think there should be less players per match need to get rid of the victim mentality and start thinking of more players as more potential kills instead of more ways to die. Change the mindset, change the game. Or, you know, stop flying face first into groups of enemies too large to keep track of, and then complain it's impossible to dodge 12 head-on missiles from a kilometer away. Well, the carry mentality stuff, at least in high tier, that's what you kind of have to do, right? You have to beat people like doing stuff like that. But yeah, I do agree that it can cause issues in terms of how it's all set up. But there are other reasons, you know, as Manuel brought up earlier. It isn't just the fact that, you know, people want to carry harder. There can be adverse effects. It's just the question you have to ask yourself is, are those adverse effects actually made because of that, or because of other reasons? And that's the tough one. That can be a little bit hard to work out. But yeah, it's one of those to at least think of. As I said, I just need those 3 questions answered from before, and I need a quote from why Gaijin changed from 12v12 to 16v16. That's it. Those 4 things, and then we can move along this conversation. Then we have Striker. Hey Tech, not so long time no see. I'd like to ask to see if you can empty that box of realism junkies into the Discord/CDK communities. I used to be an R junkie as well, until I made and played the missions I wanted. It'll never replace the core War Thunder game modes, but it's still a chance to get some fun and unique experiences that cater to these types of players. Of course, each player community is different, so everyone should do their own peeking around and see what they like best. Thanks for the content and have a great weekend. Yeah, we could do that. Could make a video on it. Like, it's a decent chunk of work to find all the communities who want to have a look around, but it can be done. Like, I could definitely do that. Yeah, sure. Why not? Let's work it out. No, I haven't, Slavic. I haven't. But nice to see you. I can definitely try and set that up. Wouldn't be too hard to do. But why not? Right. That's the last question on the tech talk. Do any of you guys on stream have any questions or thoughts? Nice to see you, Jake, by the way. Hopefully you're doing good. Nice to see you too, Calcon. Hopefully life's good. But yeah, basically, I'm doing overall not too bad. Like, I can't be mad. Life is pretty good. Looking forward to spading the G91Y. And then also hopefully playing with Freeman a bit later. Some Men of War shenanigans. But we'll just call the tech talk here. It's been a good one. I want to try and get it up as soon as possible. But how does it feel to finally get back to playing your favorite aircraft, the Su-17? Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah, this vehicle, if you didn't know, is absolutely horrific. It's a very rough vehicle at a 10.3 because it has no countermeasures. So if anybody spots you ever, you just die. And And at the same time, it has very awkward bomb loads and very awkward missiles, which it would actually benefit from having worse bomb loads and worse missiles, so below BR. B2 from rank 3 are the worst bombers to spade. The Peshkas, because they don't really have a role in the game. I remember back in the day, this was years ago, like one of the first reviews I ever did in War Thunder was about one of the PE2s, and the tagline of that review was "Jack of all trades, master of none." And I 100% believe that. The vehicle itself does everything okay. And I mean a very liberal definition of okay. And it therefore doesn't really fill any parts of the game. And that is a problem. Because in order to fit, usually in War Thunder, you need something that's really good at a certain thing. And then maybe it has nice secondary factors, or it's really good at like multiple things, right? This vehicle here is a prime example of it. This is a ground attack vehicle, which does not have a lot of ordnance. Oh my god. Which does not have access to a lot of ordnance. And also at the same time just does not really do a lot of stuff very well. So yeah, it just kind of sucks. So it's very much just preying on the matchmaker and seeing how well you do, right? Is there a black box on the top of the screen? Because we were just doing the tech talk, so all the comments. But yeah, so vehicles like that usually don't do very well. And it sucks, because it's nice when those vehicles do well. But this one is one of those. But yeah, that's the end of the tech talk. We'll continue streaming and doing some stuff and having a bit of fun. And then, yeah, we're going to spade the G91Y today and do a few other things too. Should be nice. Look after yourselves. See you guys next week. Bye-bye.